This is a tutorial on how to make a simple Frenchcore remix in Ableton. This was made in December of 2025, so that makes it about 8 months old. I didn't prep this other than making stuff the same color as other stuff, so I'm just gonna wing it. The first thing you need is a song to remix. So I'm gonna play the original sample out just through the first drop so you can get an idea of what we were working with.
Dalej szukamy szczęścia gdzieś we mgle. Wśród słów narysowanych szkłem na ręce. Dalej szukam cię, bo chcę twoją krew. Znowu wyglądam jak wampir gdzieś na mieście. Albo jak trup, gdzie jest za nią stróż. Przecież miało chronić mnie. Przechodzę tysiąc dróg, a każdy stoi duch. No i nie chcę wpuścić mnie. No i nie chcę wpuścić mnie. Kiedy strzelisz moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie. Jak twoje blizny gdzieś na ręce. Emo znowu do mnie szepcze. Chciałby czegoś więcej, co ci jeszcze mogę dać. Kiedy strzelisz moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie. Jak twoje blizny gdzieś na ręce. Emo znowu do mnie szepcze. Chciałby czegoś więcej, co ci jeszcze mogę dać. Już nocy pełnej.
So this is a good remix for me because I like to remix rock songs. I don't really branch outside of that for the most part, but everyone is good at different things and everyone is into different things. So it does not matter what you are remixing. I'd say the only stuff you need to think about when picking a remix is that one, which most songs are, it's in a 4/4 time signature. That's because Frenchcore is, or really any hard dance genre, is not necessarily easy to make outside of that time signature. And you want it to be at a BPM that is not too crazy, in the sense that when you speed it up to 200 or 210 or 220, whatever BPM your remix is going to be in, it won't sound overly sped up. In this case, the original is at 170 BPM, which I'll play it very quickly at that BPM so you can hear it. As you can hear, when it's playing at 198, it's not overly sped up, which is good. So the first thing that I always do is just try and get the basic idea to see if it will even sound good as a Frenchcore track. So what that means is I will stem the track, and you can use tools like UVR. There's one called Moises. A lot of DAWs are introducing stemmers inside of the DAWs. So in terms of just getting the basic idea, you can use something simple like a website, and then if you know it's good, at least that's what I do. Once I think the idea is good, then I will stem it in UVR. And the only reason for that is because UVR just takes longer because the algorithms are more complex. They're more precise with the stems. So you'll notice when you're stemming, let's say, the vocal from the same song through two different sites or different softwares, one will be better than the other. And if you are producing on a low-end computer, then you probably can't use something like UVR. You just have to stick to websites, and you just gotta go around and find which ones work for you. These are the UVR settings I use. the model is MDX Net 1, and then segment size all the way up to 4000, overlap all the way up to 0.99, and then I stem it once vocals only, and I'll stem it once instrumental only. That's it. I always like to split up my instrumental as well, removing the drums, because when you have drums in your instrumental and you're trying to use the instrumental in the remix in a part where the drums are not needed, they sometimes get in the way. Sometimes it's okay to not have them or for them to be in there. So it mostly just depends, but just for consistency, I always remove the drums. So now what I do is I'll lay out the vocal, I'll lay out the original sample, the instrumental, the vocal, and then I'll figure out what the bass line is gonna be, and then I'll play it with just a kick on top to see if it even sounds good. So in this case, it sounds like this. So I think that sounds good. For instrumental processing, it's really not that deep, because I'd say most of the time you're just using it as a background sound to fill up space that maybe your other sounds missed. So here it's just audio effects group, with norm being like the full dry signal, or almost full dry, which is just it's going through a soothe and a fresh air. Soothe is used to remove harsh frequencies. So this is what it's removing. Soothe is good because it's super easy to use. But at the same time, it's easy to overuse. So I wouldn't put soothe on every single sound you use. But also I've been using the same instrumental preset since 2023 or 2024. So this might be an outdated way of doing things. And then the fresh air is just boosting some highs, which you could honestly just do with an EQ if you want. And then we're just EQing out lows. When you're EQing out lows, you should do it by ear. I see some people say you need to cut exactly at this much, like 130 hertz. All tracks are different, all sounds are different. You just have to do it by ear, or you can be lazy and just load in a preset you made 3 years ago, which is what I prefer to do. And then there's a small reverb layer playing on top of that dry signal, and it's just a vintage verb with the same thing, the EQ. And then there's also a delay layer that's also playing on top of those two. This delay is so lazy. I'd say a lot of the time you're going to want to use ping pong, but I guess I didn't use it here. So it is what it is. So it goes from... Sounds kind of... I don't want to say it's necessarily too muddy, but it definitely is. But that could also just be from the stemmer itself. Stemmers aren't perfect. They're good, not perfect. And sometimes you get weird things like you can kind of hear like a crackling noise a lot of the time on your stems. So you can try and get rid of it, but you're never gonna fully get rid of it, is what I'm trying to say. So just do your best. I just try to brighten the sound, and I mean, I like this. And then next is gonna be the vocals. I actually use a different preset now. This is my 2024 rack, I believe. Um, no, this is a modified version of my 2024 rack, but I made a new one this year. But because this was made before, I didn't use it. When I was going back into this song to try and like finalize it, I tried using my new one, but I kind of made the song around this vocal rack. I remember spending a decent amount of time on it. So this is the version we have. It's the same thing as the instrumental. It's going to be a dry, a reverb, and a delay layer. But this dry layer has increased width, like increased stereo width compared to how I received it. It's compressed to, I guess, normalize, quote unquote, the levels. And then it's ran through a saturator because I felt like that was the vibe that this track needed in terms of the vocals, and then it's EQ'd. So I guess I should play without effects, and then I'll play the dry layer.
Kiedy strzelisz w moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie jak twoje blisty, gdzieś na ręce. Emo znowu do mnie szepcze, chciałby czegoś więcej. Co ci jeszcze mogę dać? Kiedy strzelisz w moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie jak twoje blisty, gdzieś na ręce. Emo znowu do
This is kind of special case because I had him send the vocals to me opposed to using a stemmer. So it has his processing on it, but I don't know. I do this on every track, so I don't see a reason to really change it. So this is what the dry sounds like with and without these changes.
Kiedy strzelisz w moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie jak twoje blisty, gdzieś na ręce. Emo znowu do mnie szepcze.
I guess the most basic way to put it is it's way louder. And then the reverb layer is, I think this is the same exact vintage verb, but there's some mid-side EQ. This is the mid on the reverb, and then this is the side. So it's just increasing stereo, mostly in this 4,000 hertz range. And then this delay also doesn't have ping pong, and I think it's the same delay as before. So altogether, these sound like this. And it's super loud right now. Let's see if I made up for that later or if I left it as is. So here I'm cutting out 10,000 hertz. I must have thought it was harsh there. Here I have a de-esser on a preset because I felt like the S sounds were too harsh. That's what de-esser does. It's supposed to, if you use it correctly, it's supposed to tame those S sounds. And then I have a rule tech, which is taming some of the lows, and then it's taming some of the highs a little less. I don't know if there's a difference, to be honest. And then I have another EQ, which is just cutting the lows just for good measure, and barely boosting at around 1,000. Oh, and there's also a saturator that is doing nothing but soft clipping. And I used to always have my vocals be like fully mono, and in this case I have them mono in the drop and not mono during the breaks. And then instead of volume automating, I'm just using the gain knobs here, which may or may not always work when you are putting so much stuff on your sound after. just because of like input signals. But I guess here I didn't mess it up enough to where that was an issue. Oh, and I just full screened my Ableton by accident. So the next thing is the kick, I guess. So in this track, I think this is the original kick I tried using. It's decent, but I do remember really not liking the punch once most of or more of the track was made. So I ditched that idea. I think I kept the tail. It sounds like I kept the tail, but I did stuff to it even after. So I'll turn off, I guess, everything I can. So that's the tail. I'm not gonna talk about how to make a kick here, mainly because I don't remember how. But if I look at this, I made it in Serum. It's been so long since I made a kick in Serum, I couldn't really teach you how to do that. I usually just combine tails now and then do post processing. So for the tail, I have a side EQ cutting the lows and then cutting a little bit at 2000 hertz. I don't know why, but yeah. And then I have a surfer EQ. I use this thing all the time because usually when I make kicks, I don't include enough sub. So then I have to compensate for that later. And here I'm adding 6 decibels on the sub frequency. And because Ableton doesn't have an easy way of automating EQs by key tracking, this is why I use surfer EQ. It looks like I have another surf on the second main frequency, but it's not really doing much. I have a fresh air. Okay, I don't think you should ever do this, but I guess it was needed here. This is probably a bad idea, so I just wouldn't do this. But yeah, it's bringing up some of those like super distorted high frequencies. Then I have an EQ taming around 750 hertz. I don't know why this is there, but another EQ bring up the highs again and then bring up 400. So instead of going back and fixing the stuff I had before, I would just add more stuff. And if you ask me why I use an EQ8 here and a Pro Q here, I couldn't answer. But at the end, I ran it through a clipper with some input gain. So that's how the tail was processed in this track. So I asked my sworn enemy, Enox, for some punches because I didn't have any that I liked. And this guy's pretty easy about sending people anything as long as they ask. So that's what I did. He sent this one and sounds like this. So if you ask me why I liked it, I don't remember, but it needs some work. So the first thing we do is an EQ. I think so. I added some sub, and I think this is where the talk is, or I don't even know the terminology. Just listen. Okay, so this makes it sound really bad. But it's there, so it's there. And then I add some transient with kilohertz transient shaper. I use this plugin a lot. And I don't know if I can see how much it's increased. The attack is increased 0.6, and this looks like it maybe goes to like 5. All it is doing is adding transient without me, adding a new channel with like a tick sound. And then I have another EQ, which is then cutting that low that I brought up, and maybe this is the talk frequency, but also increasing the high a little bit. Oh, I think it actually sounds pretty good after this EQ. So good on me. And then I run it through free clip. And then we have a gate. I think maybe after all this, it kind of made like a tail. Oh well. What I'm trying to say is the sound extended past this point, and I didn't want it to. So the way I handled that, instead of volume automating it, was by putting a gate on it. So after the sound gets below negative 13 decibels, it drops to 3, I think. I don't know. I don't really use gate anymore. I use I use a different plugin for my gating. But this is what the kick now sounds like with just that stuff. Oh, I guess I forgot to mention this. The best way to warp or to pitch your kicks is in Ableton, and you use tones mode. Now, if you want an explanation on why this is the best way of doing it, opposed to something like Nimble Kick, it's because Cepha said so, and Cepha is the king of Frenchcore, or something like that. So we're gonna listen to Cepha. Now, after that, I have another Pro Q, which is doing a weird side cut, and then a side boost, around 500. This is doing something, I guess. But I guess this part right here I wouldn't recommend too often. And in my remixes, I always run my kicks through reverb. But not like through the whole signal, just on a parallel processing, audio effects, whatever. So there's still the dry signal, but this is just like making it sound more chaotic, I guess. That's how I used to think about it. I don't really think about this anymore. I just add it to every track just because. So it's pretty quiet, but it's still noticeable. And then I run it through hard clip. Then this endless smile is getting automated for transitions. Endless smile is basically like I guess you could call it like a cheat code for transitions, because it gives you an easy way to automate stuff like delay, reverb, and like a filter all in one spot just by using a single knob. And there's a bunch of different modes to pick from. On my master, I'll always use no limit, or I'll make my own, like not endless smile, but my own chain. But here, I think I wanted something as like simple as possible. So that's why I'm using the fist in the air preset, which is the default. So getting out of drops. You can kind of hear it along with the stuff on the master, just helping the kick transition out of the drop. The last thing is this filter. Normally you'll have the filter, like you could do kick effects with the filter just by using a low cut with resonance, and that gives it a cool sound like this. If you want to add on to that, you could run it through either like distortion or bit crusher. You could run it through anything really after the filter. You could pan it, you could do really anything with your kick effects, but this is just for having the kick play as part of the build to help get into the next drop. Looks like the frequency here is going not too much higher, but with the stuff on the master, it definitely helps. I would say if you want to keep it basic, just make sure you're moving the frequency around during the drops. Like, let's say I had this part here. And I could do one kick on this frequency, one kick on this frequency, and the last one on this, and it'd sound like this. Or I could do stuff like this. You just have to mess around with it, find what's good. Like, I could even do something crazy like this if I wanted to. I think it's too hard to notice just because of the stuff I have on the master in the same exact spot, but just mess around with it. You'll figure it out. So that's the kick. I guess if it wasn't clear, there's like kick rolls going throughout. I use the OP SoundCloud Frenchcore meta kick rolls that literally don't change throughout the whole song. So you could call this a lazy version or basic, but you've heard it enough times. It's this at the start, the double kick, and then was this the last quarter into a double, and then this one is the punch into a reverse punch into the normal punch into a double, not even a double, like two quarters, and then I think it just loops with one variation right here, which is like, I call this one the triple. It's a 3/4 kick, into a punch. Yeah. You just have to mess around, just try and get a good enough groove. You can always go back and change it later. I usually do my kick rolls at the very end, and I probably did do it at the very end of this track. But let's get into the other stuff, like the versus the Reese, because I always have this down first. I think this one is a preset. I really like this preset, but there are some changes like this notch filter, for example. I think notches and Reese's sound cool. And then here, if I did anything, I mess with the cutoff of the last filter. But without everything else, that's a lot of stuff. It sounds like this. Oops. And honestly, this could be good enough, but I added a chroma, which is kind of like an easier version of pitch map. You just have to set the key of your track and then the dry wet. It's pretty subtle here, but I don't know. It pitch maps some of the frequencies that are off. I have some very small amount of reverb and EQ. I pretty much always use this type of EQ now because I don't like having too much low end in my breaks. One reason is there needs to be room for the drums, and then I just think I'd rather like keep that out of the way during the break so the drop hits a little harder. But there's also times where you just need a ton of low end in your Reese because it makes it sound cool. So now it's starting to get a little more tame. I use this compressor to kind of, with the utility gain, to balance the levels a little more and then just bring it back up. It's kind of hard to tell because the utility gain is doing so much in terms of the loudness, but it was probably needed. And then I have a saturator doing a, this must have been a phase. I don't do this ever. I was using a saturator as a soft clipper. I have another EQ. This is cutting out a lot of the highs. Probably just because I wanted to use that for something else. Another EQ, but instead this, oh, this is cutting the sides a little, boosting 380 just a little. Okay, that's doing like nothing, so we can pretend it's not there. And then another compressor. Oh, this is sidechain to the drums during the break. And that's it. During my drops, I like to keep the Reese playing, but mainly because it just gives you some more noise. And it kind of works as a texture. I usually cut, well, I always cut the lows and then I'll boost somewhere from, what is this, 600 to 1,000, like a ton, to give it more noise. And then cutting sides out, and then just side chaining this to the Frenchcore punch so it's not playing during the punch. I can try and play with the kick to see if you notice a difference, but I wouldn't be surprised if you couldn't. So I can barely hear the difference. I'd say in other tracks I'd probably use it more, but here I probably just didn't need it as much. So it's not a huge difference. And then I don't know what this is for. Oh, this is for the build. This is an EQ for the build. So this one, Labs just made a change and they like switched to a, Labs used to be a free plugin. It was good for two things. They had this free ambient guitar pack that was really good, and then they also had a really nice free piano called Soft Piano. And I actually used two of those things in here. The Soft Piano layer does not exist anymore because I don't have their paid app. And they just like shut off Labs completely, so it wouldn't even play a sound anymore. So here I switched just this to a Moto Bass, Moto Bass 2. This should be free. Just pick whichever one you like and you could use it. I've used Moto Bass in other tracks during breaks where I wanted to use like a guitar bass instead of just a typical Reese, which you see a lot in Frenchcore. In this case, I think I just use it as a just an additional sound during the break. I don't even know what this sounds like by default because all I did was swap this out. So it sounds like a computer version of a guitar bass. But I run it through an amp. I run it through a. This looks like a convolution reverb preset in Ableton. And then an EQ because I don't actually need the low end and it has too many highs. And then this utility is being automated. Oh, right here. But now it sounds like this. It's just a nice sound to have playing during the break. I'm going to be honest, I don't think I hear it during the break at all, but I do hear it in the intro and the outro when everything else isn't playing. So it's nice to have. Then we have some chords. I was listening to this before and I think the chords are really bad, but you just use like some type of super saw, and then I like to put they actually updated this in one of the newer Abletons. I don't know if it's auto pan or tremolo. It's a tremolo gate. Yeah, it's basically like a gate. So, but I don't know why I did it in this track. This track I have the same thing playing like this. And then I have it playing like this. And this one's pitched up once or one octave, so it sounds like this. Probably unnecessary, but is what it is. Here I have a Nexus pad playing with chords. I guess I forgot to mention chords. You can complicate it if you want, or you can keep it simple by just using triads. And I think this is what the chords look like normally. But for chords, you typically want them to play as close together as possible when you think about every single chord. So since all of my bass notes, oh, I should probably be more specific. Triads is just the 1, 3, and the 5 according to your bass note, as long as it's in the scale. I think all DAWs have a feature where you can highlight the scale. So all you do is turn the highlight on, set your key. And this is, according to my bass note C, this is the 1, because it's the note itself. Skip one highlighted note, and then E is the 3. Skip one highlighted note. G is the 5. So 1, 3, 5. And then you just do that for everyone. Here, the 1 is different because the bass note is different, is B. And then the 3 is D, and the 5 is F sharp. So you just do that, and then to keep my notes close together, all I do is drop that B on the 3rd note by 1 octave, and they're just a little closer together. If I were to drop the A, it wouldn't really make a difference. If I were to then raise these B's instead, you can still see it's a little further apart than right here. No, maybe it's not, but yeah, it is. It's technically by 1 note because these are next to each other and there's a gap here. So that's that. And then I think there's one more. This is Xenology. Let's just listen to it. My computer might crash if I open that. It's just another pad, but from Xenology. So I have more pads here, but these pads, instead of being a triad, they're 1st and the 5th. My sworn enemy once told me long ago that using the first and the fifth does something with something, so I listened to him and I kind of use it a lot. But this is from Serum. Oh, okay. So this pad's called Dark Soul. This is what the patch looks like. All I do is the envelope by default kind of looks like that. So all I do is lower the attack and the release. And then it's good for me. This is probably my favorite pad sound ever. I use Dark Soul in every track. This last one is, I don't know, Dark Soul again. Why is this here? Oh, this is Dark Soul, but it's maxed out movement. I usually don't do that, but here I guess it sounded cool. And also during the break, this pad is just one note. So all my pads together sound like this. I had someone ask me recently how I process my chords in my pads, and as you can see, I pretty much just put an EQ on it. That's it. And then I have these samples playing. This one plays throughout, and then one of them plays just during the drop. I think I just got in a sample pack, so I was trying to use some of the cool sounds. WH stands for I don't know. But this is just an EQ, a normal compressor, and sidechain. I think it's just kind of like a texture. And yeah, I pitched this one into the key of my track. This one is an EQ. Oh. So this one I actually pitched it to the bass line. Yeah. If you really try and focus on one sound during the drop, you probably won't hear it, but I'm sure these matter in the full context. I guess I can play it all together. I'll turn off the Reese because it'll be annoying to listen to, but this is how it all sounds during the drop. So it kind of sounds like a mess, but I guess it's fine. And then during the break, it sounds like this. So that's all those sounds. Next, I guess, is drop percussion. That just being, in this track, there's a hi-hats, snare, break. My hi-hats and my break are usually processed the same. Hi-hats, I always use a chorus with a little reverb and an EQ. This break is... Oh, actually, I put SP90 on my breaks. This just makes the sound... I'll start with the breaks. Let's start with the breaks. First thing you do is chop it up how you like, or just use the sample on its own. Doesn't matter. It's just noise at the end of the day. So I had the SP90 on, so here's without. The SP90 just makes it sound like a little dirtier. which is good for breaks, especially when you're trying to get that old school sound. Next is pretty extreme EQ. Because I treat my breaks like the hats in the sense that I want like the super high frequencies and just some of the mid frequencies. That's why the EQ looks the way it does. And then it has some reverb. This is probably close to the same reverb that's on the hats. Maybe this EQ is unique. And then there's an EQ to cut lows during the drop. I like to have my break specifically pan during the drop, and then a fresh air to bring up some of the highs. So that all together sounds like this. Okay, that reverb did a lot. That took a long, yeah, 1.5 second decay on the reverb. So that's that, and then the hats are probably the same. I would say for hi-hats specifically, you want to mess around with using open hats, closed hats. I don't have a formula in the sense that I always use the open hat on, like, I think this is called the downbeat, and then closed hats on the upbeat. I just do what sounds good at the time. I just pull in something, put it somewhere, get it all to sound good. This hat specifically is panning. I don't know if you can tell, it's panning really fast. Maybe I can turn this off. Yeah, so you can kind of tell. And it's just a cool thing to have. Everything together, or I'll play them individually. And then together. If you're gonna do anything, just make sure you're EQing your hats and you're only keeping most of the highs. I'd say most of the time my EQ cut is above 1000 hertz, but some tracks are different. Last thing is the snare. Snares are pretty easy, but I know there's people out there who have a really hard time with their snares, and for some reason they just cannot figure it out. So today I'm going to teach you. All you're going to do is use an Ableton preset called Snare Room for your reverb. Oftentimes I'll use something, I'll just type snare in the top left, go to my EQ, pick one of the three and just drop it in. Here, I guess it wasn't needed. I also have some EQ that's turned off, saturation that's turned off. This is probably used during the build. Yeah. But your snares go from sounding like this to this. Okay, this is a pretty bad snare. I'd say if I were to do anything to this now, is I'd definitely increase like whatever snare frequency that is, and then I'd probably add a transient shaper to it that has a little bit of pumping, just because that's epic on a snare. And then if you want, you could add snare variation, kind of like kick rolls. This actually might also be because of the sidechain. Yeah, so I probably wouldn't add transient shaper because the sidechain's actually getting rid of it here. I'd say I don't always use the same snare in the drop as I do the build, but here I did. And the only automation that you can watch is the EQ. pretty crazy stuff there. But you take your snare playing on every beat to every half beat to every quarter beat. That's it there. Probably the only interesting thing in this track is the break. I'll play this break because it's way cooler.
Dalej szukamy szczęścia gdzieś we mgle, wśród słów narysowanych szkłem na ręce. Dalej szukam cię poprzez twoją krew. Znowu wyglądam jak wampir gdzieś na mieście. Albo jak drugie za nią stróż. Przecież miało chronić mnie. Przechodzę tysiąc dróg, a każdy stoi duch. No i nie chcę wpuścić mnie.
So this is a pretty cool break in my opinion. This is definitely the part of the track I'm most happy with. And let's turn everything off that I can. So I'd say it's about more 50-50 now, but I used to always just find audio samples and then do the drums myself, like mostly in audio. I took some time to find some contact libraries I like for my drums, so that's probably what I do half the time now, but here we can see what it looks like in audio. So here's the kick. Oh, and it looks like all of these are Cashmere samples. If you don't have the Cashmere packs, you should make an effort to get them. Yeah, I'd say if I were to only have one sample pack or one group of sample packs ever, it'd be the Cashmere ones. There's so many sounds in there where you can get away with using just Cashmere samples and make multiple different tracks. But yeah, here's the kick. And then there's a drum bus and saturation. Pretty much just beefs up the kick. This is the snare. Using that snare EQ I was talking about earlier. Here's a crash with EQ. Here's a cymbal that kind of plays like before the crash. And together. And then this is, I don't know what this is. Let's see what this is. Oh, I kind of use this similar to like how I ride. Well, I guess I also use a ride. I should turn this on too. I use the cymbal in the ride kind of to keep the groove for the most part. Like, so there's some consistency with the drums, so we're not like getting all over the place. And then I use a closed hat here just for a little bit of extra noise, a little bit of variety. Playing on its own pattern. And I'm gonna be honest, ever since I switched to Ableton 12, I could not figure out how to get the grooves to work. So I do it all by hand. So if I were to zoom in on every single thing, you could see like some stuff is not exactly on like the grid. I don't recommend doing it this way. It takes a while. I recommend learning how the groove feature works in Ableton 12, but I couldn't figure it out, so I gave up. Oh, and then we have the toms. You always need your toms for your like transition parts. Yeah. On the group, what you do is you type in drum and then you go somewhere, I don't know, until you find a good like group processing layer, and then you use it. This sounds good to me, so that's how it is. You just mostly have to spend time getting your groove to sound right. So here, the groove is very basic because it's transitioning out of the drop. And then here, looks like for all this part, it's more traditional, I guess. And then here is where I transitioned into, or I switched like the flow to be more of a transition to the next drop. And yeah, I really like the drums in this track. I think the last thing there is effects. Just find a crash you like and then make it flow with the kicks. So I'd say typically I probably follow the kick rolls better with the crash. Like for example, this part, I'd probably do something like this. But I guess when I was making it, I either was being too lazy or I thought it was too much crash. All your other sound effects, you don't need much. Like there's a down filter at the start that you cannot even hear because the track doesn't even like play. I use this Virtual Riot like sparkle riser before every drop in every track ever. Because I think it sounds cool. And then like transitioning out of the drop, you have an impact with that same down filter. And then transitioning into the build, I have a laser sound with that same impact. A smaller like sweep up. And then during the build, there's a longer sweep. And then it's all the same. So I'll play, yeah, let's play this set of effects just soloed so you can hear what the effects are doing.
Mnie jak listek, który istniał, znowu rozwiał wiatr. Twoje ręce pełne śladów jebanego szkła. Nie wiem co ci jeszcze mogę dać. Może jesteś tak jak ja, może masz 1002. Może też nie liczę strat, może coś jestem wart. Może jesteś tak jak ja, może masz 1002. Może też nie liczę strat, może coś jestem wart. Kiedy chcesz
Yeah. You don't need a lot, but you just need enough. I don't want to say it's necessarily easy to overdo like your sound effects, but I can also see worlds where that's possible. I would say to best avoid that, just use a crash during the drops, and then all your other sound effects you keep outside of the drops, because the drop just has so much stuff going on that realistically, if you have sound effects playing throughout, what are the chances they're going to be noticed? Probably pretty low. I think that's everything in the track. I guess we could talk side chaining. If you don't know what side chaining is, it's just ducking the sound while the punch or while your kick, when your kick plays, so that your kick is more prevalent, I guess. It makes sense because in any hard dance genre, especially Frenchcore, the kick itself, the Frenchcore kick, is the main part of the track. That's what makes it the track. So I use Duck Buddy with MIDI triggers. So this MIDI doesn't play any sound, it's just a trigger. And when this trigger happens, a signal is sent to all my other sounds with the Duck Buddy to do this. So this is on a 1/8 length. So for 1/16 of a note, the sound goes to 0 and then comes back up on starting at the second 16th of the note. It's very short. I actually do, yep, you can see my duck buddies are different. I guess it doesn't go to 0. It goes to whatever this depth is. So for this first one, instead of like negative infinity, it goes to negative 60. This one a little more. This one same. 57, 44, 42, 41. Whatever. You definitely don't have to do it individually for each sound. I'd say at the minimum, do it for every group of sounds. So all your pads at least go through the same sidechain, all your chords, all your hats go through the same sidechaining, whatever. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to make it so that you can hear the punch or maybe notice the punch better. I'm not going to turn off all the sidechain and show you before and after because that would take too long. So you just have to trust me. For my master, this track is kind of a bad example. I usually don't put anything on my master but a limiter. But here I have a ozone because I think I was really in my head about how the track sounded in the end. But I finally got it to a point that I like. But everything before the ozone, I think this is an old master. Yeah. Everything before the ozone, being this stuff, is all automations. Pretty much only for transitions. So let's see. This flanger turns on here, and it's not automated at all. But I don't know how to describe it. I guess I'll turn it off and on, and you can try and hear it. I don't know how to describe it, but if you hear it, you hear it. And then I have this build master, which is used for getting into drops, doing the little transition in the middle of the drop, and then transitioning out of the drop. This I'd say is probably not needed when you have an endless smile, but I use the more basic endless smile version or model here, which means I probably needed to compensate the EQ itself, which is why that's there. And then this, what does this do? I guess I have some of the highs cut off before the track starts getting into the drop, and then it comes back in. I don't do that very often, but you can hear that along with this utility, just the volume. And then this utility is also controlling the stereo width. So before the drops, I'm making it more mono, just so that once the drop itself starts, it hits just a little harder compared to without. And then this is straight from Cepha. He makes the breaks just a little quieter than the drops. And depending on what you put on your master, it will eventually become pointless to have this because you have so much like input gain. But if you don't use a lot of stuff after, you can get away with doing this. Something else people do is like before a drop, they might lower the gain a little more. I probably do that like 1 out of 20 times. It's pretty rare that I do that. The master itself is an ozone with an EQ, low end focus, exciter, EQ, and I don't remember if these are changed. And then just a limiter at the end, to where I felt it was getting loud enough without overly distorting it. In Frenchcore, you can get away with pushing the limiter pretty hard because that Frenchcore just is distortion at the end of the day. But it's important to not overdo it, because then your track becomes unlistenable, in the sense that everything, it sounds like it's being like squashed together, and then you can't make out certain sounds. But I think that's it. So I'll play the track from the start and try and zoom around to the parts that are important.
Jebanego szkła. Nie wiem co ci jeszcze mogę dać. Może jesteś taka jak ja, muszę już coś stąd was. Może też nie liczysz strat, może coś jestem was. Może jesteś taka jak ja, muszę już coś stąd was. Może też nie liczysz strat, może coś jestem was. Kiedy strzelisz moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie. Jak twoje miejsce, chcesz na ręce. Bo znowu do mnie szepcze, chciałbyś czegoś więcej. Co ci jeszcze mogę dać. Kiedy strzelisz moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie. Jak twoje miejsce, chcesz na ręce. Bo znowu do mnie szepcze, chciałbyś czegoś więcej. Co ci jeszcze mogę dać. Dalej szukamy szczęścia, gdzie jest we mgle. Wśród słów narysowanych szkłem na ręce. Dalej szukam cię, bo chcę twoją krew. Znowu wyglądam jak wampir, gdzieś na mieście. Albo jak drób, gdzie jest na nią stróż. Przecież miało ochronić mnie. Przechodzę tysiąc dróg, a każdy stoi duch. No i nie chcę wpuścić mnie. No i nie chcę wpuścić mnie. Kiedy strzelisz moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie. Jak twoje miejsce, chcesz na ręce. Bo znowu do mnie szepcze, chciałbyś czegoś więcej. Co ci jeszcze mogę dać. Kiedy strzelisz moje serce, będę tutaj wiecznie. Jak twoje miejsce, chcesz na ręce. Bo znowu do mnie szepcze, chciałbyś czegoś więcej. Co ci jeszcze mogę dać.
If you have questions about anything, you can ask in the comments and I will ignore it. And then if you want to get your questions answered, you can join Gorilla Pack and ask them there.